Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of the Empowered Psychology podcast in part 2 of Julieta's Conqueror story. So I haven't told you girls this yet, but we are survivors, that is true, but through my reflection and also through me telling my story, hearing other people's stories, I have changed the way I refer to survivors. We are conquerors. So that's what I'm going to be referring to Julieta and also Patty, because we are all conquerors. So this is part 2 of Julieta's sudden cardiac arrest conqueror story. Now, guys, if you have not seen part 1, you're gonna have to go see that. That was amazing. As y'all know, I talk so much, and these girls had me, quiet for 24 minutes. It was such a powerful story and a true testimony of divine timing. Let's just put it that way. So I am really excited to be here with Julieta and Patty to share part 2 of her story. So before we get into part 2, we're just going to do a brief rundown of what happened. So, Julieta, what happened on May 3rd, 2020?
So, the short version, shut me up if I talk too much, because I like to get carried away, but what happened, I was having a very regular day up until 10:30 p.m. where I was working out with my sister, Patty, and I was doing push-ups, which I'm notoriously bad at, and I just got tired and out of breath and hit my head, collapsed while working out with my sister, and she didn't know it at the time. She thought it was a seizure, but I was actually suffering a sudden cardiac arrest, which we did not think possible since I was an athlete at the time. And so I was down for about 30 minutes, and during that period of time, I received CPR from both Patty and my mom, which I was very grateful for. They acted very quickly and right on time, and the paramedics arrived, and I was given 4 shocks from an AD, and the 4th one was the charm. After that, I was taken to the Texas Children's Hospital in the Woodlands first, and from like 11 when I arrived to 4 when I left, I rested multiple times during that period of time, so they transported me in a special ambulance to the medical center in Houston, where I was treated, and I was put into a medically induced coma for about a week while being on ECMO or life support, and after that it was just about recovering and trying to get out of the hospital and kind of returning to normal.
So, question number 1, what is sudden cardiac arrest?
So, sudden cardiac arrest is an electrical abnormality. Basically, the heart goes into a series of ventricular fibrillation or atrial tachycardia, and it sets the heart off rhythm and it just starts to quiver. So, it's no longer beating or pumping blood, and clinically, you are dead. And the only way to remedy it is by receiving external defibrillation from an AD or if you have an ICD. And I think it's very confused with heart attacks. Most of the time they're used interchangeably when they're not. Heart attack is more of a plumbing issue, while sudden cardiac arrest is more of an electrical issue. So heart attack is when something is obstructing the blood flow, and part of the heart stops beating, but overall the person is still breathing, they're conscious, and most of the time they can feel that pain and they're able to act, while a sudden cardiac arrest, it's sudden, it just happens, and you rely on the people around you to save you.
So what is the prevalence of sudden cardiac arrest?
Well, it is the #1 killer for student athletes, and sadly, like we saw recently with Damar Hamlin, he suffered one. It was in the NFL. You just never expect it. So it is the #1 cause of death for student athletes. And I feel like it's very prevalent, but it's not often talked about. For as sad as my story is and as Damar's is, I think it's very important that we use them and learn from them, because it happens all the time. It's just not really talked about.
I think it's also important to note that it's not only the number one killer of student athletes, it's the number one killer overall in America, and more so than a lot of other diseases, like a lot of cancers, fires, car accidents, all of those combined. So I think it's not spoken about enough, just because a lot of the times it happens when people are sleeping, or it happens whenever, like, if they're driving and it happens while they're driving, they call it a car accident. So I think sometimes the numbers are not as well represented in the media as they should be, and also I think that's why there's a lack of trainings and a lack of awareness overall. Like in schools, there's no type of like AED trainings, or there is CPR trainings, but not as much for students. I feel like they don't emphasize that enough. And also there's not as many locations that have AEDs as there should be, and obviously those are the ones that save your life. So
yeah, I feel like overall it's just about being aware that it doesn't just happen to people who are older. It happens to, it's for infant death. I mean, it happens at any age regarding your physical health for athletes or non-athletes. So, I mean, it doesn't really discriminate. It can happen at any time, any place. So, knowing and being aware of that, I think, is very important.
So, question 3. What causes sudden cardiac arrest, and are there any predispositions to having sudden cardiac arrest?
So obviously, I feel like one of the main ones is certain heart diseases like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. There are many different ones. I have arrhythmia, but I never knew that sudden cardiac arrest could happen to me. We didn't know. We never trained for anything like this, and we were never told by anybody that this would be something that could happen. And I think that's also one of the misconceptions that a lot of people have. You can be predisposed to it, but it is sudden. So sometimes you just don't know. Like for what happened with Damar, that was commotion cordis. So he just got struck to the chest in a very, misfortunate timing, and it sent him into shock and sudden cardiac arrest. So it can happen when you're perfectly healthy and nothing's wrong with your heart. Or sometimes you are born with heart defects and they just don't get detected, and the first sign is sudden cardiac arrest.
So I think it is important to, like, when we talk about prevention based on the causes of it, if it's a predisposition based on like an illness or some cardiac issue, it is important to try and get your heart checked early, because there are steps that you can take to prevent a cardiac arrest, but you can only do that if you know you're predisposed to it, and that is by getting your heart checked.
In conclusion, anyone can get sudden cardiac arrest at any time, any age. Wow. So, question 4. What inspired you to create Surviving Sudden Cardiac Arrest, and what is y'all's mission?
I think what inspired us was right out the gate. Whenever I came out of the hospital, we got an enormous outpour of messages from all these foundations across the nation, and we started slowly checking them out and seeing what they were doing. And sadly, like, most of them were based off of parents whose children died and they didn't know, so they started an organization, and we felt like there weren't a lot of survivors. It's rare to survive, but I felt like we could add our grain of salt to the movement. So we started Surviving SCA in hopes that we could aid, even if I survived, just kind of keep on carrying this with me and trying to make the best out of it, and send awareness to athletes especially, because I never knew that something like this could happen to me. And as far as our mission goes, of course, one of them is to raise awareness, teach CPR and AED skills and the prevalence of knowing them, even if you don't feel like that it's something that you might use, because truly you just never know. Placing AEDs in public spaces, and hosting heart screenings, hopefully.
So now that we know what sudden cardiac arrest is, its prevalence, we are going to touch on a very important topic, which is what do you do when someone goes into cardiac arrest, and how important is timing when someone goes into cardiac arrest?
Okay, so I feel like the most important steps that you have to take is first recognizing that it is a cardiac arrest. I think a lot of times people expect a cardiac arrest to be a silent episode where the person just falls and is just not responding, but it's also not doing anything. And for the most part, that is not true. A lot of the time they present agonal respirations, which basically just means that your brain is still functioning and it's very much alive and wanting air, but you're not receiving any because your heart stopped. So this means that the person sometimes looks like it's a seizure. They can be like twitching. Sometimes they have like muscle cramps. You can hear them like moaning or grunting or like making really weird sounds. So I think that's very important to know that that can happen, and that doesn't mean that it's anything else. As long as it's abnormal breathing, that is a cardiac arrest. I think from there, calling 911 is really important because you need paramedics, you need specialists to take over for you. And in the meantime, doing CPR and getting an AED and placing the AED on the person is super important. Not just placing it, also delivering a shock. Because we have heard of a lot of people who pass away because they put the AED on them, but they get too scared to deliver the shock, and the person unfortunately passes away. So getting, I think they call it the chain of survival, and it's basically called call, push, shock. So call 911, push as in CPR, and deliver a shock through an AED. And as far as timing, it is super important to recognize it and act super quickly, because as far as AED goes, for every minute that goes by that you don't use an AED, there's a decrease of 10% in survival. So if you wait until paramedics get there to deliver a shock, sometimes they take, on a good day, they might take 7, 8, 9 minutes. By that point, the person is most likely not going to survive by the time they get there. And also, as far as CPR goes, CPR is basically doing or trying to do the heart's work by recirculating blood and oxygen to the body. And if the heart does not receive oxygen for a long time, you're gonna have, if the person does come back, which you do hurt their possibilities of coming back, if you don't deliver it properly and on time. If they do come back, they're gonna have some sort of brain damage. Yeah, some sort of brain damage. So definitely time is of the essence. You cannot wait for paramedics to get there and do the work for you, because if you do that, the person's not going to survive. So at that point, the person's dead, it's right in front of you, you can't hurt them, they're already dead. So knowing that, and knowing that all you can do is help, is super important. And just knowledge, overall, just having knowledge over it.
Yeah, just trying your best. CPR won't hurt them, even if you don't know exactly what you're doing, and an AED will not shock a person if their heart is still beating. So you can place an AED and press the shock button as many times as you can, but it will not administer a shock unless it seems it viable and they're presenting viable rhythms.
So y'all's amazing nonprofit offers these trainings that you need to know when people go into sudden cardiac arrest. So can you guys describe these 3 trainings and what they are? And give us information about them.
So through our website, we have linked this company that actually provides these trainings from the comfort of your own home, called the HSI. So they will actually ship a mannequin to you and allow you to get your hands on these mannequins and kind of feel what CPR would feel like, and guide you through all of this without you having to leave your house. Of course, there's also ways that you can get involved around your community. I know most firehouses host CPR training several times a month, so searching up and looking online at areas around you. There are also most likely organizations that are willing to provide these trainings, most of the time for a very low cost or even for free. But yeah, I think they cover CPR and AED training and all that you need to know, and what you need to do and how to identify cardiac arrest really, really well. And it's just information to really have in your back pocket for whenever you need it. And I think it's very important that since these trainings are most of the time free or at very low cost, that you kind of take advantage of that.
I mean, I feel like everyone knows what like CPR training is, but what is AED training, and what are the misconceptions that people have about AEDs that need to be ended, basically.
So I think from what I saw on TV before I even knew how big ADs were and before any of this happened was the typical like paddles charging, you place them on the person, shocks them, the whole works. But truly an automated external defibrillator, which are the ones that you find in most buildings, they're very, very smart devices and they're so simple to use. Even 8-year-olds can use them. So AD trainings go over all the basics. They teach you how to place the pads on different types of people. So for example, how to place the pads on children, on people who have internal cardiovascular defibrillators, which is what I have, or pregnant people as well. And the basics of them, that you cannot hurt people by placing these pads on them because the device is smart enough to detect the rhythms needed for shocking. So you do not have to make those life-saving decisions of whether to shock or what jewels to put or anything like that because the device does it itself.
Cardiac arrest is the #1 killer in the United States. And for some strange reason, there aren't AEDs in every building. And a lot of people don't know where to get one. So if someone goes into cardiac arrest, as you guys have educated us about, timing is everything. Correct me if I'm wrong, you have like 6 minutes to do CPR before you have brain damage, right? Yes, so timing is everything. So we need these AEDs around just like fire extinguishers.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think this is? Like, why do you think there aren't enough AEDs around, and how are you guys working to fix this problem?
So I think one of the main things that we are doing right now while we still continue to grow our organization is just by raising awareness and making people see how prevalent it is and why we need them, and trying to convince those people around us, like lawmakers and people that have a little bit more influence in these decisions, to persuade them to really take action and make sure that they are as common as fire extinguishers. But I think the reason why, I actually could not tell you the reason why they aren't. I think having all the knowledge that we have and all the statistics that are provided, at least in the United States and Mexico, they don't have that, but at least here, knowing that it's a leading cause of death, I think most of the people that we've met that do this and work towards bettering the conditions for sudden cardiac arrest are all baffled as to why it's not just more common.
I think a lot of it is lack of knowledge, and I think people are always so intimidated by the fact, like even people near, like close to us, like in our family, when we told them about how AEDs actually work, they're super surprised and they didn't know it was that easy. And we do provide AED trainings, but honestly, you don't need to be AED trained in order to use one at all. Like honestly, the AED itself guides you. A lot of them have pictures, a lot of them have voice commands. So, and it's super easy to follow through and like do it yourself. I think we do provide the trainings because it does provide people with the confidence to actually reach out and do it themselves. But I think it's just a lack of education and knowledge, and knowing that they're there for you and not for EMS or paramedics to use. They're there for the community to use. And I think that, I mean, even now we're fighting to make sure that people know that, like at UT there were stickers, and at the Woodlands High School there were stickers on the AEDs that said like trained professionals only. And I remember I saw that and I had to reach out and send that huge email to them, like a super long email saying like that's not, these are meant for the community to use, and if we wait for EMS to get there, like
it defeats
like
the purpose.
Yeah, it defeats the purpose of having them. So I think, I mean, and once we told them, they removed the stickers from all of the buildings. So I think but yeah, I think that's one of the main reasons. Just people don't know, and I think they would rather err on the side of precaution, but because they don't know that how hurtful that can be towards a person, they just, I don't know.
Wow. Thank you girls so much for educating. Actually, thank you queens so much for educating us about these life-saving trainings and things that we need to know. Now, what are the ways that we can be proactive about our heart health?
So I would say, first and foremost, getting your heart checked if you haven't already. I feel like a lot of people might have a heart condition that can be treated with medication or even simple scheduled surgeries on their own time without having sudden cardiac arrest be your first sign of a heart issue. So if you have the time and the means and doing some research about where you can get that done, I think that would be the biggest thing that we would advocate to people, because it truly is such a shame to hear from these parents that they find out later on that their kid actually had a heart condition that could have been treated with just simple over-the-counter medication or something like that. So that would be, I think, the biggest topic that I would want to hit on.
Yeah. And as far as heart screenings go, they're nothing like super scary. Most of the times, like, there's organizations like us that holds them, and sometimes they're from either free or like maybe $20 to get it checked. But basically, it's an EKG. It's external. Like, they just place some like stickers on you, some pads on you, and then they just read your heartbeat, and that's about it. So it's nothing that's scary or anything. And I think same thing with like knowledge is power. And if you know you have something going on, it's important that you treat it and you find out early. And even if you got in a heart screening, let's say when you were a kid, it's important to keep up with it, because it's shown that as you develop, like as you go through your teenage years, you might develop a heart issue. So it's always important to keep checking your heart, even if you've already done it years ago, just to make sure you're up to date and that you're safe, and make sure everybody in your family does it as well. So.
And making sure that everybody in your family is up and renewed on all the CPR and AD trainings, to make sure that even if something happens unexpectedly, everybody around you knows what to do in case a loved one happens to suffer through a sudden cardiac arrest.
Thank y'all so much for giving us this amazing and valuable information. And yes, I'm going to have their amazing organization linked in my bio, and y'all can, go get these trainings through them. They have a whole organization and links to so many amazing places you can get these trainings. And by doing that, not only are you taking care of yourself, but you're taking care of the community and saving a life. And that is what their organization is all about: saving lives and preventing this problem that has affected so many people from happening. So yes, make sure to check them out. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to part 2 of Julietta's and Patty's Surviving and Conquering Sudden Cardiac Arrest episode. I am, again, so honored to have them here on Empowered Psychology, sharing their story and giving us very, very valuable and life-saving and life-changing information. Cardiac arrest can happen to anyone of any age at any time, so it's really important to get these trainings, these CPR trainings and this AED trainings in order to protect others. So by you educating yourself on this topic, you are technically saving a life. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to part 3, where Julieta is going to open up about how she adjusted to her new life and her new normal. And that is, again, such a powerful testimony that she's going to give. So I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.